In 1985 Mexico, Heinrich is in a car chase, while a group of police cars are after him. We see that his stomach is injured and he's using some sort of device to heal the wound, while talking to his accomplices. They tell him to get out of the car since the road is blocked off. But it's too late as he can't get out of the car, and he's only left with the choice to make the jump, so he tells them if he dies they have to look inside. As he drives off the bridge, only to jump out of the vehicle at the last second, hanging onto his sword for dear life. Meanwhile his accomplices finally arrive in their car. But a truck runs it over, flipping the car upside down, and a man steps out the truck, killing them while they hold each other's hands. Years later we see Evan Macaulay waking up, as a voice narrates that they are people called the Infinites. The Infinites have the power to get reborn after death, and some want to destroy all life, because after thousands of years they got bored of life, and others want to help technology. Later we see Evan Macaulay going for a job interview, after he ends up not getting the job because 6 years ago he broke a customer's arm for grabbing a waitress's ass. Later we see him crafting a sword for the mafia boss Ronnie. At Ronnie's we see him hanging a sword to Ronnie, so Ronnie tells one of his men to pay Evan Macaulay. And the man laughs at him because he gets paid in pills, so Ronnie uses the sword to cut the metal next to them, impressing them. And the man tries handing Evan Macaulay the pills, saying it's 60 packages, but Evan can immediately tell that there is 55 packages, which they did not agree on. So he grabs the sword, trying to get it from Ronnie because he didn't keep his part of the deal. Seeing this, the man points a gun at Evan, making Ronnie get away, intending to test the sword on his girlfriend's arm. As he gets ready to cut the arm off, Evan grabs it while cutting the man's fingers off, using Ronnie as a hostage. As he's walking out of the room, he tells Ronnie's girlfriend to go, and he escapes while pushing Ronnie to the ground. And he manages to get onto a building nearby. On the roof he sees snow falling and even remembers himself as a different person, but he just thinks it's just a disorder while jumping off the building, unfortunately falling on a car, and he blacks out. Later we see him in a police station. As he's in the investigation room, someone named Bathurst walks in, while holding Evan's sword. After the guard leaves, Bathurst puts the sword onto table, while saying that it's not a disorder as it's all real. Well, at least it was, and he asks if he remembers Syracuse from the Second Punic War, which was 22,000 years ago. But Evan doesn't understand, so Bathurst asks why he didn't sign the sword. To which he counters that it's not a crime. So Bathurst tells him that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia at the age of 14 because he carved the word "look" inside in his own chest with a box cutter, and he takes the pills because of that. So Bathurst gets up, taking 6 items out of his bag, putting them on the table, while asking Evan which one of the items on the table are his, and Evan says it's his first time looking at the items in his life. So Bathurst takes out a gun, putting a single bullet in it while spinning the bullet holder, making it 1 in 6 chance that if he pushes the trigger the bullet will come out. And he puts the first item in front of him, asking or it's his, but Evan just keeps yapping about random things, making Bathurst push the trigger, scaring Evan. So he puts the next item in front of Evan while asking him or it's his, so Evan says yes in order to save his life, but Bathurst still pushes the trigger, saying that he can't lie, making it a 1 in 3 chance the bullet is coming out the next time. And again he asks if the third item is his, and Evan remembers himself using the item in the Stone Ages, so he says yes. So Bathurst reveals that the bullet was never in, while calling him old friend. And at that moment a car busts through the wall and a woman gets out, shooting Evan's handcuffs while telling him to get in her car, to which he does. And they drive off, with Bathurst quickly following them in a huge truck. While driving she fires some sort of weapon that makes the police cars in front of them explode, with Bathurst's truck getting stuck in the broken road, making them get away safely. In the car she introduces herself as Nora Brinkman. So he asks the name of the person that was chasing them, to which she asks why he didn't recognize him. But she says he's known him for a long time, and he continues to say that he never saw that man in his life. So she says maybe not this life. While arriving at a private airport, with a jet waiting for them, while outside of the car she asks or he can speak different languages without him ever learning them, while speaking Russian, making him shocked. And she tells him that he was reborn, and that's why he can make a sword without ever making it in his life, or even speak Russian. But he still doesn't believe her while walking to the jet. In the air she tells him there are called the Infinite, and less than 500 people in the world can get reborn. And he falls asleep, waking up the next morning to a building in the mountains. She explains that all of the people who want to improve technology and leave Earth better than they found it, go to this place every single time they get reborn. Without Bathurst knowing about it, she tells him that Bathurst wants to destroy all life so he doesn't get reborn, and in this last life he hid an item called the egg somewhere before dying. While walking into a room with people training, they bow to him hoping he's Heinrich reborn. So he asks what he knows that they need so badly. So she says that only he knows, while walking to another room where they can study everything. And an old lady comes up behind him, introducing herself as Garrick. Apparently Garrick is the head in technology and research. And she tells Evan to follow her, and he's told to stand in the circle, Meanwhile, Garrick turns off the lights. And a projection of Bathurst shows up and his changing faces to all of his lives. And Garrick says that him and Bathurst were once good friends and they made some of the greatest moments in human history. But one day he loses faith in humanity. And for the last 300 years he wanted to destroy human life so he doesn't get born. And because of that, he made an item called the egg, which has the power to destroy all life as you know it. And she tells him that without him they will all be dead, and Evan is confused. So Nora continues to explain that in his last life he entered Bathurst's lab stealing the egg, as well as killing everyone who helped build it, which left Bathurst with no way to build a new one, as the people who helped him can't get reborn and Evan died without telling anyone where he hid the egg. Meanwhile, Evan is taken to a lab, and is told that in his last life he made a power that allows him to manipulate the energy around him, which means he's going to have abilities stronger than anyone else. Later we see him training with the woman from earlier. At first he's unable to keep up, but after a while he's able to easily keep up with her, even surpassing her. Afterwards we see him working on his core. After a while he's finally ready to get his memories back. They plan on shocking his brain into remembering. But it doesn't work, and later we see him in a room with Nora and she keeps pictures of all of her past lives on the wall, and in one of the pictures she is with a man who was her husband. But no, not for life but for eternally. And in her last life they got killed by Bathurst while holding hands and she got his soul trapped in a chip, making him unable to be reborn until it breaks. And most of them have a reawakening and remember everything, usually at the age of 13. And because the shock of the brain didn't work, they have to go to a guy named the Artisan. Hours later we see 8 drones flying to the mountains. Meanwhile, Bathurst's men make their way in the building, while killing everyone in sight, making the alarm go off, so Garrick goes to take a look, but at that moment Bathurst walks in while calling her my love. Later we see them in a room, and Garrick asks what happened to him as he was so beautiful, to which he replies, as were you. While revealing that unlike others, he gets his memories back from the moment his brain forms, and he has to spend months alone before he gets born. So he threatens to kill one of the girls with the gun that traps them into a chip. Meanwhile, Evan and the others are in a jet flying to the Artisan. Later they arrive in a car, making their way to the Artisan. At Artisan, Nora tells him to cure his memory, and Artisan gets shocked because he's with Treadway. And he tells Evan that they're going to reset his memories, while opening a device that's going to get him at the door of death. Because if you die, your life flashes before your eyes. He's trying to get him to remember. And it's the closest you can get to a total mental reboot. So he has a talk with Nora saying he can die in there, to which she agrees. Meanwhile, Bathurst is watching them through a camera, while Evan is in the machine, with it quickly filling up with water. And he passes out, while Bathurst is still watching the camera. And at that moment Evan remembers himself as Treadway, putting the egg inside his stomach using a device to seal the wound. After we see the water getting drained out, waking up a bit later. With Bathurst still watching, they ask him where the egg is. So he says that he said look inside because the egg is in his body. Hearing that, Bathurst sends his men to get the body of Treadway. And some of them ambush them, shooting Evan and the trainer in a second, and more of Bathurst's men break in, but they're quickly shot at, leaving Bathurst with only one guard. And later in Scotland we see Bathurst opening Treadway's body, finding the egg just like Evan said, making him want to cry. Later Evan wakes up while asking where Nora is, to which he's told that she went to get the egg, making him go help her. Meanwhile, Bathurst is talking with his assistant, and at that moment a bullet flies in, while nearly hitting him, and he gets up, sending 3 drones managing to locate Nora, so she hooks onto one of the drones with a rope, jumping down and landing safely. And more of Bathurst's men start showing up shooting at Nora. But she still manages to evade the bullets, even a falling tree. After a while Bathurst's men manage to catch up to her, making her run in the other direction. After a while she manages to hide behind a tree, quickly taking out the men one by one. And a helicopter arrives shooting at the drones, making Bathurst walk away with the egg. Meanwhile, Evan gets Nora driving away with her, and the helicopter finishes the rest of Bathurst's men. Meanwhile, Bathurst is in his plane while sealing the egg in a box, making a timer start. Just as Evan and Nora arrive at Bathurst's house, the assistant blows up their car, making them get out, as Bathurst's men surround them. After a little while they manage to win, so Evan gets on a motorcycle, driving to Bathurst's plane, leaving Nora facing off with the assistant, and after a little while Nora kills her. Meanwhile, Bathurst's plane is taking off, and Nora manages to get to the room where the chips are stored, wanting to free her husband. Back to Evan as he is too late, and the plane is already taking off, leaving him to make the jump. But of course he succeeds, taking one of the plane's wings off, stabbing his sword in the plane, holding on for dear life. Bathurst tries everything to get him off but fails. At that moment he controls the air, allowing him to effortlessly stand on the plane even though it's moving, and cuts a hole through the roof, getting inside. And just as he's about to stab the box he gets shot, falling down. At that moment Bathurst walks in. While looking at the box, Evan wakes up revealing that he was never dead. And a fierce battle breaks out between the two, so the box gets launched outside, along with them. Meanwhile Nora explodes the room, freeing all the people trapped in the chip, and even she dies in the explosion. As Evan manages to stop the timer, while taking out the egg, falling in the water, and the scene switches to years later, and we see Nora reborn meeting her husband. Meanwhile we see young Evan, practicing martial arts. And the movie ends with Artisan giving him his sword back, while throwing an apple, which he easily cuts in half. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.